What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and refined review for Legendary Corrin, Legendary Lilina, Young Minerva, Young Merric, Ferdinand, Kiria, and Leila's refines. So let us begin with Legendary Female Corrin, who gets an amazing weapon refine to her Primordial Breath. So it did give her -1 special cooldown, making Negating Fang into a 2 cooldown special, and she also got these special charges on her attacks. Now keep in mind this is only on her attacks, so she'll need to retaliate back so that she can loop her Negating Fang essentially. And then with this weapon refine, she's able to get +9 to all of her stats in the combat, and she did get Guard 4 as her remix skill, and that is going to be changing Shield Pulse as her slot B skill, and now she has got Shield Pulse 3.5 basically in her weapon. I say 3.5 because it gives you a little bit more flat damage reduction on your defensive special triggers. So she's going to be able to get 7 flat damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the Brave hits. So having this kind of flat damage reduction similar to Brave Corrin is really good because she already has the Brave damage reduction that is not pierceable in her Negating Fang. So stacking up this kind of unpierceable damage reduction is really good. And then she also has Null Guard, which is going to be enabling seamless looping of her Negating Fang. And she also gets 30% damage reduction in the combat. So she's got different sources of damage reduction, which makes her as a pretty good tank. And then finally, she's able to heal up 7 HP after the combat. So her weapon refine is actually a lot better than it seems at first, because having different sources of damage reduction, having Shield Pulse, and also looping Negating Fang, a special that gives you 40% unpierceable damage reduction is really good. And just like Tea Time Ira's special, this is also going to be triggering in the combat if you're facing any kind of opponent with a Brave effect. So this kind of unpierceable damage reduction is good, and it's a defensive special, and it also boosts up your next attack by 40% of her attack. So this is going to be a pretty good special with her, especially with all of the damage reduction that she has gotten. And even if she faces any kind of damage reduction piercing, she still has this kind of unpierceable damage reduction. And she can stack up a lot of different skills to function as a pretty fun tank. And with the tools that we've gotten on dragon units, she's definitely an above average tank. So this is going to be a really good thing for the people who want to use her a lot more. And as an arena legendary unit, she's going to be able to easily tank the threats there. And she can even function in the most competitive game modes like Summoner Duels and also in Aether Raids offense, especially for Omni tanking, because she doesn't really have any kind of effect in her weapon that requires her to be within 2 spaces of an ally. So even against threats like Duo Sanaki, you're going to be able to be 3 spaces away from your allies, trigger your finish skill, trigger your weapon, and if you give her debuff neutralization, then she doesn't really get affected by any kind of debuffs, and she can easily tank a lot of threats. So there, she can be useful, and pretty much in any kind of game mode, she's going to be really solid. And if you're going to be building her up on a budget, then you can simply give her bonus doubler 3. Make sure to learn the remix skill of hers in Guard 4, which is going to be giving you that damage reduction on the first attack, which is pierceable, but still you can stack it up. And Guard effect is good as a tank, but if you're going to be investing in her seriously, then this could be a build to go for with attack speed finish 4, giving you some in-combat healing and also true damage, and counter 4 can give you even more damage reduction and also the damage reflection, which is really good with the Negating Fang 2 that she has got. And this is also going to be giving you the post-combat healing, so she can heal up 14 HP after the combat and then heal up 7 HP in the combat with the finish skill. So it's a very self-sufficient build, and when it comes to tanking, you can try and stat stack by using Panic Smoke 4 and its foe penalty doubler effect. And this is going to be taking a sacrifice of Brave Corrin, but I think it's going to be worth if you're using her at this kind of investment. And Magical Null Follow-Up is also going to be an option that you can run in her slot B, because a lot of tanks need some kind of damage reduction piercing nowadays to take on the nukes that have insane damage reduction nowadays. So having some kind of damage reduction piercing can be really helpful, and bonus doubler 4 is also going to be an option, especially if you run attack speed Oath 4 in her slot C, or even speed smoke 4. And this build is also going to be helping you if you run her with Legendary Camilla, because you can stack up Legendary Camilla's damage reduction piercing status with Magical Null Follow-Up and pierce to the damage reduction of the enemies by 75%. So she's going to be a really good ally with her, and this is going to be the option that a lot of Corrins can run at max investment. And you can also use her in Aether Raids offense with Null Counter Disrupt in her slot B. So like I mentioned before, she can easily stay away from her allies, get the healing, and still tank. a lot of threats like Duo Sonaki, and you can also not really care about any kind of Fire Sweep or Dazzling Staff effects by running Null Counter Disrupt. Of course, you're going to be needing to support her, and if you do provide her some good support, then she can easily tank. You will be needing some tech options depending on which teams you lack, so she can try and tank with different support units, and that can be a really effective way of using her in the win season. You can finally also use her in Arena as a legendary unit because of her pair-up effect. So because of Disencounter Dragon, she can score as if she's 195 BST, and Infantry Null Follow-Up 4 is actually a pretty nice option that you can run along with Counter Roar 4. So you can get the damage reflection, the healing, and also get the Null Follow-Up at the same time, because the tier 4 version of Infantry Null Follow-Up now does give the user itself the Null Follow-Up status and also the Order status. So not only it's good for the mobility, but also for the support on your other infantry units, and also helps Corrin in a way, because you're going to be facing a lot of nukes like Duochrome and so many of the other units with pre-charged specials, but she's going to be able to take them on pretty easily in something like Arena. Her Arena performance improves by quite a bit because of this weapon refine. Summoner Duels is going to be quite a bit cutthroat, but some of the builds which I've mentioned before can work out in Summoner Duels, especially the one with Magical Null Follow-Up, because damage reduction piercing is going to be really helpful. Legendary Lilina gets a refine to studied 4 plays, and it did give her -1 special cooldown, making Gifted Magic into a 1 cooldown special, and now the Quicken Pulse effect in her weapon has been upgraded to Time Pulse 3, which is a really great thing because in case you get stopped by any kind of guard effects, you can still charge it up next turn and AoE nuke the enemy. And with this weapon refine, you're also able to get +11 attack and resistance in the combat, and her weapon is one of the few weapons that has got Hardy Bearing built into it. So it's a really good combination with AoE specials, because usually you're going to be dropping the enemy's HP pretty low with her AoE attack, and then if they have any kind of vantage effect, then you can just ignore it because of Hardy Bearing. She also gets guaranteed follow-up attack, which is not going to be needed most of the time because she can just kill things with the AoE special, and then she also gets true damage based on 15% of her resistance, and this is also going to be getting added into her AoE special, which is really important and helps her quite a lot as a nuke. And then finally, she's also able to get 30% damage reduction on foes first attack. So this is also another effect which should ideally not be needed if you're going to be running an optimal build on her, because she's going to be killing everything in a single hit with her Gifted Magic. And now after her remix, Gifted Magic 2 is going to be giving you that Canto 1 after the combat, and also to allies in 3 rows and 3 columns centered on Lilina. So this does make her as a pretty good support unit for arena usage, and just getting Canto 1 out of this is going to be good for Lilina because she can run other skills which can double down on her resistance and debuff the enemies. So overall, this weapon refine is not really all that flashy, but still it does give her the things which she really needed, like the true damage and also having Time Pulse 3, and she can also function as a much better support unit now because of giving Canto 1 status to her allies and also getting that herself, which is going to be good for the hit and run, especially in something like Arena. With this refine and remix, they really don't want you to run Life and Death as a slotty skill on Lilina, so Still Water 3 is going to be something you can get from Tea Time Tail 2, and just stack it up with the Sacred Seal so that she can make use of her remix skill and sabotage attack resistance and debuff a lot of the enemies. Pulse Smoke is something that you can run on a budget, but if you want to replace it, then I think that Defense Rest Ploy 3 is pretty much going to be the best option, and you can also stack up the resistance with Still Water 4 and have really high visible resistance if you're going to be spending any kind of florets on her. Of course, Attack Ivy should be your main priority because she is an AoE nuke, and Gifted Magic does have 1.0 multiplier now. Previously it had 0.8, so she does become slightly stronger with her AoE attacks, and that's why stacking up her visible attack is going to be important, and the Ploy skill is going to be giving you that exposure status on the enemies, which can give you +10 true damage, and it does add into the AoE damage as well, and you can just disable any kind of grand strategy or bonus doubler enemies, which is going to be amazing for Arena. So this is going to be the main build that you can run with a Rally Plus skill and use her in Arena, and you can even use her with Flared Mirror and Occultist Strike to stack up the pre-combat damage, because at max investment, Lilina has so much resistance that just having Still Water as the Sacred Seal is going to be enough, and Flared Mirror is going to be giving you that resistance and also the pre-combat damage, which is really deadly with AoE nuking. So Range Cavaliers don't really have too many options, but these are going to be her main options for supporting her allies or for stacking up a lot of true damage along with the pre-combat damage. Young Minerva gets a pretty good weapon refine for her free-to-play Grail unit, and it does make her pretty unique as a support option. So she's got Dragoon Axe giving her -1 special cooldown, and she can also inflict the guard effect on the foe in the combat, which is good for a tanky mixed phase build. And now with this weapon refine, she's able to get +8 to all of her stats in the combat, and also heals up 7 HP after the combat. So the self-sustain is going to be helpful on many of the tanky builds, and then she's able to function as a pretty unique support unit when it comes to the Grail units, because at start of turn, she's going to be able to give herself and the allies in 2 spaces the +6 attack and speed buff, and also the special charges status. So this kind of makes her as a free-to-play Na that can actually Gale Force. And as someone who uses Gale Force strategy quite a lot in Aether Raids offense, I'm pretty excited to build her up because you can easily get rid of Flashing Blade or Heavy Blade Sacred Seal on your teams, where you're going to be using units like Brave Celeb, for example, and that is going to be a huge pressure alleviated because you don't really need to meet any kind of stat checks to get the special charges. And the fact that Minerva can use Gale Force unlike Na and just jump in and help your allies is really good. And another thing is that because she's an Axe Flyer, she doesn't really overlap with a lot of Gale Force initiators like Winter Edelgard or like Brave Celeb or Brave Grom, for example. So she's going to be functioning as a pretty unique unit for Gale Force strategies when it comes to the Grail pool. And finally, she does have the Null Follow-up built in her weapon. So even though this weapon refine might seem a bit boring at first, I think this is really practical. And like I said, it does make her unique as a Grail unit. Na can still have access to a lot of infantry skills, but when it comes to Gale Forcing in Aether Raids offense, I think that young Minerva is going to be a straight up better option, because getting the visible buffs and also having this kind of -1 special cooldown Gale Force unit is really solid. And she can also be used as a tank now because of the healing, the full null follow-up, and guard is also helping you tank. And she does have some good options because of having -1 special cooldown weapon, which is pretty rare for free-to-play units to begin with. So she can have no quarter at her disposal now, which is going to be piercing through the damage reduction, and she's going to be able to retaliate back with it because of having special charges in her weapon. So I'm pretty happy with young Minerva getting this kind of weapon refine. And if you're going to be building her up, then you can try and run her with the Divine Codes build, because we did get Jill in the Limited Ephemera manual, so you can get speed defense rain out of that, and also run her with attack speed catch 4 and speed defense near trace. So you can work with a budget build if you don't really have the premium fodder, and run her with Bonfire or Gale Force. And if you're going to be giving her a bit more premium skills, then you can run attack speed clash 4, which is going to be giving you the attack and speed debuff neutralization, which is really helpful. And you can also run Rain Snap in her slot C, which is not only going to be increasing her movement, but also supporting your other allies. So it is going to be doubling down on the support, and she can pretty much work as a green Aryan because she can give the extra movement and also the special charges effect. Of course, this is not the charge status, so you'll have to watch out for the stalled status of the enemies, especially in something like Summoner Duels, where Duo Thor is really prevalent. And you can run her with Gale Force now, and she's going to be able to Gale Force pretty easily now because of the special charges and because of it being a 4 cooldown special. You can also make use of her as a tank by running Guard Bearing 4 for the 60% damage reduction, and you can double down on the support by running Guidance 4 or Soaring Guidance. Both of them are going to be good options for the mobility, and No Quarter is going to be the best special that you can run because it is going to be piercing through the damage reduction skills of the enemies. So the nukes with insane damage reduction are not really that big of a problem for young Minerva because of the special charges and a 2 cooldown No Quarter. Now of course you can even run her with Gambit, but then you're going to be losing out on the damage reduction piercing, which I think is really important nowadays. So it could be done, and you could get 40% damage reduction and also the true damage with Aether or Miracle, but I personally do prefer having Guard Bearing 4 and No Quarter on her, even though it's a lot more expensive. And in the slaughter you can run Attack Speed Unity because as it is, she's going to be giving herself the visible buff to attack in speed, so in case you get panicked or debuffed, then this skill can help you, and you can even grand strategy stack this up in something like Summoner Duels and easily use that. You can also use her in Aether Raids offense, and this is pretty much going to be the way that I'm going to be using her most of the time because she's an amazing support Gale Force unit. So I'm going to be using her in the light season, where in the Astro season I've got Garrick for the support, and then in the light season you can run Asker, reduce the cooldown of Gale Force even further, and give the special charges to Asker, which he's going to be benefiting because of his tempo effect. And then you can also give the special charges to the other Gale Force initiators. So she's going to be wanting to run attack speed Clash for there because she's going to be jumping with Wings of Mercy 3. She's not going to be able to function as an initiator because of the healing, but healing is not really that big of a problem when you're a follow-up unit in a Wings of Mercy chain. And then you can just run anything else in her slot C. Any kind of rain or hold skill does work out because most of the time you're going to be just initiating combat with your Gale Force initiator, so guidance for Soaring Guidance is not really needed when it comes to Aether Raids offense. And you can even run her with Deadly Miasma, but that is going to be some crazy expensive skill. And then finally, if you want to commit to her player phase build, then you can use her with Flared Sparrow and also aerial maneuvers, which is going to be really fun with the null follow built in her weapon. And also with Gale Force, you're going to be able to get another action. Young Merric actually gets a Cracked Refine for a green infantry mage, and even though he's going to be rare, we're going to be getting the holoforms of Arcania units in a couple of days. It should be on 13 by the looks of it, and a lot of people are probably going to be redeeming him because he has got a lot of the things that he could want on an infantry nuke. So Winds of Change does give him -1 special cooldown, making his Righteous Wind special as a 1 cooldown special, and then he also has effective damage against flyers and already had the full null follow-up built into this weapon. And now with this weapon refined, he's able to get +10 attack and speed in the combat, and he's also able to get true damage based on 15% of his speed, which is good for the nuking. And Null Guard is going to be really helpful so that he can trigger Righteous Wind as a 1 cooldown special on your double attack. So he can try and pre-charge it, or you can even trigger it on his double. He does have that flexibility, and then he also gets Stealth Speed Resistance in the combat, so you're going to be ignoring any kind of visible buffs of the opponent to their speed and resistance. So he doesn't need to run lull speed resistance either. A lot of these slot B options are pretty much redundant on him because of this weapon refine. And then finally, he's able to completely pierce through the damage reduction skills of his opponents when his special triggers. And this is going to be really, really good for the nuking, even though depending on your specials can, lead to downfall many times because of the scowl effect if you're pre-charging the special. But even if you do not, he's still going to be able to trigger his special, which is going to be scaling based off his speed. And he's going to be getting like 30% of his speed as the boosted damage. And you can also heal up 10 HP on him and also on all of your allies on the entire map once it triggers. And this weapon refine does help him trigger that special because of the null guard, and the other offensive effects are definitely going to be helping him, even though he doesn't really have the highest attack stat when it comes to the modern nukes. Still, he's going to be able to function as a pretty good nuke with the tools he has got now. And with the Holoforms revival coming up, he's going to be one of the candidates, so you can try and get the premium scales on him, which I do mention here in that Holoforms. So after this weapon refine, if you just want to use him on a budget, then you can still use him with Windsweep. It is a good slot B option because a lot of his, slot B skills are already present in his weapon refine. So Windsweep is actually not that bad, and Savage Blow could be a budget player phase option. But I think that if you're going to be investing heavily into him or going to be getting him as a pharma unit, then you can try and get this build with attack speed finish 4 and time pulse 4. So this is going to be stacking up the true damage with the finish kit and also occultist strike, giving you that, pre-combat damage. And time pulse 4 is going to be pre-charging your righteous wind and always looping it. You're going to be a bit susceptible to these scowl tanks, but still this build is going to be an option. And you can also get even more healing out of the finish kill if the 10 post-combat healing was not enough out of his special. The special is pretty much the best special that he could ask for because it's a low cooldown special that scales off his speed and also heals up him and also his allies. And he also now pierces the damage reduction completely with the special. So that's why pre-charging your special is good. But if you don't really want to be susceptible to the scowl effects, then you can simply not run Time Pulse 4. And you can run Desperation 4 on him because he already has Null Follow built in his weapon. And it is going to be counting the spaces moved even if you teleport. So you can easily get Desperation 4 and trigger it in the combat with the Oath Force skill. And attack speed unity can also be an option because in case you get debuffed on your attack and speed, it could be helpful, especially for Aether Raids defense. So he could be used on a Brattle Catcher team, even in Summoner Duels actually, because the damage reduction piercing and the quad attacking with Desperation 4 is definitely not something that you can take lightly. It's worth keeping in mind that any kind of tank with Hardy Bearing is going to be able to counter him because they'll be disabling the Desperation effect that he has got with this build. So either you get countered by Hardy Bearing or you get countered by the Scowl effects. You pretty much have to pick your poison, and he's one of the few units who can make really good use out of Speed Preempt, especially at high and max investment, because you can completely pierce to the damage reduction with a special, so he can easily loop it with Time Pulse 4 in his slot C and get the true damage with the finish kill and actually kill the enemies because of the Vantage effect out of Speed Preempt. So he can easily use this, and it kind of reminds me of Gideon Male Violet or Legendary Male Violet for that matter, because being able to pierce to the damage reduction being in the Speed Preempt or Vantage range is going to be pretty fun. Ferdinand gets a new weapon and refine in Stoutheart Lance, which is going to be having Spectrum Unity built in it. So this is going to be enabling you to stack up attack speed Unity and also Grand Strategy of Legendary Male Robin for a lot of stats. And this is kind of similar to the Spectrum Unity built in the weapon of Legendary Marth and also Echidna. So it is good for stat stacking, and then he's going to be able to get +8 to all of these stats in the combat. He's also going to be checking for his HP, and then he's going to be getting the in-combat effects depending on his HP. So if his HP is at or above 50%, then he's going to be getting that guaranteed follow-up attack, which does help in the situations where he's facing a faster opponent who doesn't have null follow-up, and then if his HP is at or above 75%, then he's able to get +7 true damage per hit. So it is going to be giving him a bit better damage output, and he's also got 40% damage reduction on foe's first attack, and also follow-up negation, which again does help if you stack up a lot of speed on him. So he's essentially able to have the Omni Breaker effect with effective stat stacking, and finally he's able to heal up 7 HP after the combat. So I do think that this is a decent weapon for a demote unit. It's not really all that insane of a weapon refine, because the Grand Strategy stat stacking is not really as insane anymore because of the tier 4 ploy skills, but it is something that you'll be able to do with him. The unfortunate thing is that being a Cavalier and trying to be bulky is not going to be faring too well because you have less BST compared to many of the infantry units, and also the access to the skills is not really all that diverse. You only have a couple of options, so you can still function with this weapon, and you don't really have to give him any kind of arcane weapon like Arcane Xiang, because he's pretty much able to get the follow-up negation and the guaranteed follow-up attack out of this weapon and then stack up a lot of stats. You're definitely going to be needing Legendary Male Robin for that, and he's going to be able to function with the Unity skill, which again is not really seen that much on a Cavalier, but Ferdinand definitely wants to have that, and he also wants to get the healing so that he can trigger all of the effects of his weapon. So if you're building him up on a budget, then he can run Moonbow as the special and also run attack speed catch in both Slot A and Sacred Seal, and this is something that he can get from the Divine Codes, and also run speed defense Neotrace for the Canto. And Pulse Smoke could be a decent slot C option because we did get the limited ephemera manual of Boom Pent, so that could be run on a budget. If you're trying to use him without the Ascended Florets, then I do feel like stacking up speed is going to be helpful because you can get the Omni Breaker effect, especially if you get the debuffs to your speed. And if you want to run his best build, then you definitely need some premium fodder in Gambit 4. So because he doesn't have a -1 special cooldown weapon, you're able to run Aether or Miracle and get 50% damage reduction, which is going to be stacking up with his weapon, and also 15 true damage, which also stacks up for a total of 22 true damage per hit. So Gambit is extremely good on him, and it's one of the few options that Cavaliers have got in order to function as a bulky unit in the enemy phase or even in the mixed phase. And Ferdinand is going to be making use of attack speed Unity, and he can run triple Unity if you run him with Legendary Male Robin. Even Rion Plumeria could be used so that he can give him the foe penalty doubler effect and stat stack even more. There's also the usage of Gatekeeper where he can give you even more healing so that he can stay healthy to get all of the effects of his weapon. And Alarm attack speed is going to be something that he can run, which can give you Canto 1 for the retreating, or Inside attack speed is also another way of stat stacking on him. But I do like having Alarm attack speed because at least you're going to be able to get the Canto. Kiria gets a weapon refined to her Mirage Rod, and this did give her +3 attack, and now it does have -6 attack and resistance rain, which does mean that she can support her allies and debuff the enemies in the combat. But unlike a flying unit, she's not able to stack this up with another rain skill, and then the rain sacred seal, she does get the guaranteed follow-up attack, which really helps her because she is very slow for a mage with that 20 base speed. So this is going to be helping her quite a lot. And then she has got 75% damage reduction on foes' follow-up attacks. Now keep in mind that this is the damage reduction only on the follow-up attacks. It is not present on the first attack of the enemy, like it is the case with a lot of the weapon refines. So you're going to be needing to run something like Guard 4 to get the first hit damage reduction, and then on the foes' follow-up attacks or their third and fourth brave hits, you're going to be getting that kind of damage reduction. So it is a bit unfortunate that we don't really have too many skills on the mages to get the first hit damage reduction, and then she's also going to be able to support your allies by debuffing the foes in 3 rows and 3 columns for -6 attack and resistance debuff, and also the sabotage status. So this does enable Kiria to function as a pretty decent support unit even on a budget, and she is able to get -5 attack and resistance debuff on the foe in the combat. So she's able to stack up a lot of attack and resistance debuffs on the foe, and also she's able to get the true damage based on 15% of her attack, and finally she's able to get the 7 HP healing after the combat. So overall, Kiria is going to be able to function with the support of this weapon, but unfortunately, like I said, the lack of damage reduction skill is something that holds her back. And there's also the fact that we have just got Validar as a red infantry mage in the Grail pool, and he is going to be having more damage output than Kiria in any day of the week because of the insane true damage stacking that he has got. And he's also able to inflict the debuffs and support your allies at the same time. So Kiria is going to be facing competition from him, and in the future, if we do get any kind of skill like Gambit for mages, then she's definitely going to be able to function even better by having this kind of 75% damage reduction on the follow-up attacks. But until then, the best option that you've got for her is going to be Guard, which is going to be giving you that first hit damage reduction that she desperately needs, and the Guard effect is going to be helpful so that you don't get blown up by the special of the enemies. But then again, we've got a lot of nukes with Null Guard, so a lot of times this is going to be getting ignored, and she is going to be really needing to use that damage reduction on the follow-up attacks in case she doesn't able to kill. You can run Glimmer as the special because she can debuff the opponent for so much resistance, and she can just stack up a lot of attack, so she can function with that. And attack resistance finish 4 is something that you can run in her slotty to get even more true damage, and you want to run a ploy skill ideally in her slot C so that you can stack up even more debuffs. It has got the same range as the sabotage debuff in her weapon, so it allows you to support your allies in another way, and you're also able to get the true damage and the debuffs. So whenever speed defense ploy comes out, that is going to be the ideal ploy skill, but until then, defense versus ploy is going to be the option. And this is only something that you can do at high or max investment because you're not going to be having enough visible resistance. And unfortunately, she doesn't really want to run Still Water because that is going to be compromising her defense, which is still pretty good for a mage. So she's going to be wanting to run Squaddy's BU Sacred Seal for getting some visible resistance, and even on a budget you can make use of her, but she's going to be needing a lot of investment in the modern times. And you can even run her with Special Spiral 4 and Time Pulse 4 so that you can loop Iceberg and do a lot of damage with her resistance, and you're going to be able to stack up even more true damage with the Slot A and Slot B skill. And then you can also run a really premium build on her with Fire Flood Boost 3, giving you that guard effect and also extra HP and bulk, and attack resistance tempo 4 could be run, and it is really good with a guard skill because you're going to be able to get the null foe special acceleration with the tempo skill, so you're able to stop any kind of special charges of the enemies. And like I said, getting blown up by specials is something that you'll have to watch out for. So it does help you with that, and you also get to pierce the damage reduction of the enemies. It's not the complete damage reduction piercing like Special Spiral 4 build, but still you're able to do it partially, and then you can run a ploy skill to get the true damage and do even more debuffs. And if you want to use her with close counter or close reversal, then it is going to be an option because she's one of the few mages with a lot of defense, and she also debuffs the enemy's attack quite a lot. So it is going to be an option, and you can also run Panic Smoke 4, which can give you the foe penalty doubler effect, which stacks up really well with the debuffs that she can do from her weapon and also the sabotage status. The final refine of this batch is going to be Leila, and she was a really popular unit back in Aether Raids when we didn't really have any kind of save units. So you would just use her with any kind of broadly fan user like Matthew or Sod. And I used to use her quite a lot, but then the save skills came in and made it so that she couldn't swap places with her support partner. Unfortunately, this weapon refine doesn't really help her do anything with that or help solve it. So she's going to be getting +3 speed out of this weapon. And now she has got a bit more lenient conditions, so she can get the player phase fire sweep effect even if she's not supported by any kind of support partner and if she just has more speed than the foe. And after the combat, you're able to swap places with a supported ally in 2 spaces. So this is the main thing which she was known for, but unfortunately the save skills prevent any kind of out of combat movement like from repel or lunge, and even the swapping in the case of Leila. So it's a bit unfortunate that she's not able to get over her save skill weakness. So you'll have to run her with Embla, but that is not really possible in Aether Raids offense because Embla is a Dark Mythic unit. And now with this weapon refine, she's able to get +10 attack and speed in the combat, and you're also able to get true damage based on 10% of her speed. She does have a bit of support, so just like Kiria, she's going to be able to debuff the enemies and support your team in a way. So at start of turn, on the closest foes in 5 spaces, and any foes in 2 spaces of them, she's able to inflict them with -6 speed and defense debuff and also the Discord status. So the range of this debuffing skill is way too huge. So she's always going to be able to debuff a lot of enemies at the same time, which is pretty good even if Leila herself is not entering the combat, and then she's able to get special charges per attack, both on her attacks and also on the enemy's attacks. But with the fire sweep effect, you're not really going to be getting counter-tagged unless you face a null counter unit, and at that point Leila is probably going to be dying to them because she doesn't really have a lot of bulk. And finally, she's able to do 7 damage post-combat to the target and also foes in 2 spaces of the target. So it's a bit better Savage Blow, and this could definitely be helpful on a budget, and she can certainly find use because even without her swapping, she's going to be able to be used for the debuffs that she can do and also the chip damage she's able to do. It's no pre-combat damage, but still, it can help you for getting the kills, or at least in something like limited battles or arena assault, but that is pretty much going to be how Leila is going to be used. She's not going to be returning to her glory days of Aether Raids offense, which is a bit of a shame. So if you're going to be running her on a budget, then she could be used with double poison strike and also savage blows, so you can just stack up a lot of chip damage, and this is one easy way of using her in arena assault or even limited battles. But a lot of people are probably going to be having very strong blazing sword roster, and we also got Ninja Lin as a free-to-play unit when she won the Hero Rises event. And if you're a big Leila fan and if you want to invest heavily into her, then now her best slot B skill is going to be speed defense tempo, because she does have the special charges from her weapon, and you can run Time Pulse 4 with Ruptured Sky and trigger it on her double with the tempo skill and also with the special charges of her weapon. So it is going to be having pretty good synergy with her refine, and you can also run attack speed unity in her slot A and blade session as your sacred seal to stack up as much speed as you possibly can. So let me know in the comments which refine from this batch you like the most, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Vantage against Legendary Lilina. So that's it, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.